Today in Capechi's Corner, we're going to look at special right triangles. We're going to start by looking at the 45-45-90 theorem. And what this states is, in a 45-45-90 triangle, the hypotenuse is root 2 times as long as a leg. And the 45-45-90, what those stand for, they're the measures of the angles. So two of the angles are 45 degrees and one is 90 degrees. So if we look at our diagram, we have a right angle already set. We have a 45-degree angle, so I know this other angle has to be 45 degrees because the sum of the angles of a triangle are 180. And when I look at this, I realize I have an isosceles triangle since two of the angles are 45. So if this leg is 12, then this leg is also 12. And I know the hypotenuse is equal to root 2 times the leg, and I know that the leg is 12. So in this case, the hypotenuse is going to be 12 root 2. So let's look at our next few examples. It says find the value of x. So in number 1, again, I know I have a 45-45-90, and I'm given the leg has a measurement of 9 root 2. So if I want to find the hypotenuse, which is what x is, I have the hypotenuse is equal to root 2 times my leg, which is 9 root 2. So again, I have 9, and then I have root 2 times root 2 gives me 2. So the hypotenuse, or x, has a value of 18. Let's look at number 2. Again, we know that the hypotenuse is equal to root 2 times the leg. 16 is my hypotenuse, and x is my missing value, which is my leg. So I have 16, which is equal root 2 times x. Now I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by root 2. So I have 16 over root 2. Now I know I can't have a radical on the bottom, so I'm going to multiply top and bottom by root 2. So I have 16 root 2, and then root 2 times root 2 gives me 2. Now I know I can simplify what's on the outside there. So that becomes 8 root 2, which is x. So that's the measure of my legs, is 8 root 2. Our next theorem is a 30-60-90 theorem, and what that states is, in a 30-60-90 triangle, the hypotenuse is twice as long as the leg. So that's twice as long as the shorter leg. And the longer leg is root 3 times as long as the shorter leg. Now again, that 30, 60, 90 is because the measurement of the angles are 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So if I look at my diagram, my shorter leg is always the one across from my 30-degree angle. So if I know that the hypotenuse is 2 times the short, so I know that's 2 times the short, then my hypotenuse in this case is going to be 20 because 2 times 10 is 20. Now, if I want to find my longer leg, which again is across from my 60-degree angles, I know that the long leg is going to equal root 3 times my short. So my short leg is 10, so this is going to give me a value of 10 root 3 for my longer leg. Let's look at our examples. It says find the values of x and y. Now, in number 1, we're given the hypotenuse, so sometimes it's a good idea just to label it if that helps you. My x is going to be my short leg, that's across from my 30-degree angle, and y is going to be my long leg. Now, if I'm not given my short leg, that's the first thing I always need to do. So I know the hypotenuse is equal to 2 times my short. So in this case, my hypotenuse is 12 root 5, and that would be 2 times my short. So I know that my short, which is x, is going to equal 6 root 5. Now, if I want to find my long leg, I need to take that times root 3, because remember that my long is equal to root 3 times my short. So now that I have my short leg, I need to multiply that by root 3. And so my long leg, which is y, is going to be equal 6 times the square root of 15. There's not a perfect square that goes into 15, so there's my final answer. In number 2, I'm given my long leg, so this is my long. So again, the first thing I need to do is go to my short. So I know that my long is equal to root 3 times the short, so that's filling what I know. The long is 9, and I have root 3, and my short leg is going to be x. I need to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by root 3. And 9 over root 3, so I need to go top and bottom of my numerator and denominator by the square root of 3. I need to rationalize, and I get 9 root 3 over 3. I can simplify what's on the outside, So x has a value of 3 root 3. That's my short leg. Now that I have my short leg, I know that my hypotenuse is twice that. So my y, which is my hypotenuse, is going to be 2 times 3 root 3, which gives me 6 root 3. In our next example, it says to find the values of x and y, and this diagram is a little bit more complicated than the others, so let's see what we have. My triangle on the left-hand side is a 45, 45, 90, so I'm going to mark that. I know that the other measurement there is 45. And my triangle on the right-hand side, again, I know that that has to be 90, and it looks like I have a 30, 60, 90. So now from here, I can find the values for both x and y. Now the only measurement I have is this 8 on this triangle on the left-hand side, so I need to work with that first. So although I don't need anything direct, I can't do anything directly to get to x and y, I definitely need to find this piece right here, this side right there. So let's start with that. So that's a leg. I'm actually going to make that the letter W just to help me. So I know that my hypotenuse in a 45, 45, 90 is equal to root 2 times the leg. So the hypotenuse is 8, root 2, my leg, which I just made the letter W because that's my unknown. I'm going to divide both sides by root 2, and I have 8 over root 2. I need to multiply top and bottom by root 2 to rationalize, and I have 8 root 2 all over 2, which is 4 root 2. So that's going to be my one side. So I'm going to use that here. That's 4 root 2. Now, if I look at that and I look at my triangle on the right-hand side, that becomes my short leg. So that's definitely going to be important. That's my short leg right here. So, and using my values and my formulas that I have, I know that my hypotenuse is going to equal to 2 times my short leg. My hypotenuse in this case is x, so 2 times 4 root 2. So x is going to have a value of 8 root 2. Now I need to do the same thing for my long. So again, my long is equal to root 3 times my short. So my long leg, it has a value of y, root 3, and my short leg there is 4 root 2. So I multiply those together and I get 4 root 6 is my value for my long leg. Our next problem states find the length of a diagonal of a square whose perimeter is 48. Now I've drawn a square, so I know if the perimeter is 48, I need to divide that by 4 in a square because all 4 sides are the same. So that means each side is going to be 12. So I'm going to label that. I'm going to draw my diagonal, so I know I can work with that. There's my diagonal. And I know that obviously each corner is 90 degrees. Square has 4 90-degree angles. So I really have here, if my sides are 12, again, I have an isosceles triangle, so that makes this a 45, 45, 90. And I know that my hypotenuse is equal to root 2 times my leg. So the hypotenuse, I can make that x. X is equal to root 2, and my leg is 12. So I know that my hypotenuse, in this case, has a value of 12 root 2. In our last problem for today, it says an altitude of an equilateral triangle has a length of 6 root 3. What is the perimeter of the triangle? So again, I drew the diagram for us. I know that an altitude meets at 90 degrees, so that's what I did here. And I labeled it 6 root 3. Now again, an equilateral triangle is also an equiangular. So I know that each of my angles are going to be 60. This altitude divides that angle in half. So I'm working now with the 30, 60, 90. What I'm given is the long leg. So the long is equal to 6 root 3. Okay, so if I want to find the perimeter, I need to find my values of the sides here. So my hypotenuse, I'll make x, and then I'll make this side y. So the first thing I always have to do is go back to my short. So again, I know that my long is equal to root 3 times my short. My long is 6 root 3 is equal to root 3, and my short is going to be y. So it's root 3 times y. And if I divide both sides by root 3 to isolate that variable, I can see that y has a value of 6. So I'm going to label that. This is going to be 6 here. And again, my hypotenuse is equal to 2 times my short. So my hypotenuse, which is x, is going to equal 2 times 6, which is 12. So I know that this side is 12. Again, I have an equilateral triangle, so this side is 12. And this whole side on the bottom is also 12. So my perimeter, it's asking for the perimeter of the triangle. My perimeter of the triangle is 36.